Why do wars still happen in a world full of diplomacy, international law, and global institutions? If economic interdependence is so deep and communication channels are constant, why do states still choose violence? The study of the causes of war sits at the center of international relations because conflict remains the ultimate failure of cooperation. To understand why wars erupt, scholars examine explanations at multiple levels: individual leaders, domestic politics, and systemic structure. At the individual level, war can stem from misperception, miscalculation, or personal ambition. Leaders interpret threats differently based on ideology and risk tolerance. The 2003 Iraq War, for example, was shaped heavily by leadership decisions and threat perceptions about weapons of mass destruction. Similarly, the escalation of the Russia-Ukraine war cannot be separated from leadership judgments about security and NATO expansion. At this level, psychology, cognitive bias, and decision-making under uncertainty matter. War sometimes emerges not because it is inevitable, but because leaders misjudge costs or intentions. At the state level, domestic politics and internal pressures play a role. Economic instability, regime insecurity, or nationalist sentiment can push leaders toward external confrontation. The diversionary theory of war suggests that governments facing domestic crises may externalize conflict to consolidate support. National identity disputes, such as those in the Balkans during the 1990s, show how internal fragmentation can spill across borders. Trade disputes escalating into geopolitical tensions also demonstrate how economic competition can transform into political rivalry. At the international system level, structural factors dominate. Realist theory argues that anarchy and shifting power distributions create insecurity. The security dilemma often triggers arms races that escalate into conflict. World War I is frequently cited as an example of systemic miscalculation driven by alliance commitments and rising power tensions. The Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union illustrates how bipolarity can stabilize conflict through deterrence, but also sustain prolonged hostility. Today, strategic competition between the US and China reflects similar concerns about power transition. Some wars are driven by economic motivations and resource competition. Access to oil, strategic waterways, or rare minerals can intensify disputes. Control over the South China Sea involves not only territorial claims, but also shipping routes and energy resources. Similarly, conflicts in parts of Africa have been linked to resource wealth and governance challenges. Economic incentives interact with political insecurity, creating layered causes rather than single explanations. No single theory fully explains war. Individual leadership decisions, domestic political dynamics, economic pressures, and systemic insecurity often combine. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, for example, reflects leadership perception, national identity, NATO expansion, and shifting power balances simultaneously. Understanding the causes of war requires examining all these dimensions rather than relying on one explanation. And now that you understand why wars occur despite institutions and diplomacy, the next step is to explore how security is conceptualized more broadly, moving from traditional military security to human and non-traditional security in international relations.